Hello and welcome into the Sorare Game Week 408 preview, brought to you by SorareData. I am Andrew Lairdinho. You can find me as Lairdinho on Sorare. Joined today by the man, the myth, the legend, Quinny. The man who pretty much, I would say, invented Sorare Game Week deadline shows, which this isn't, but we're going to be previewing it. And I thought, who better to have on the show than Quinny? So Quinny, thanks so much for joining me this week.
No, thanks for having me on. Particularly since I invited myself, so so thanks very much. I do appreciate it. But no, I seen you do it last week. I was like, hey man, game weeks is what I'm all about. This is what Sorare's all about, you know. And when we're talking about playing the game weeks is the game, you know. And it's definitely where I get my most enjoyment. And it's it's the parts of the week where, like I'm sure every Sorare scouting manager around the world does, you can just lose time. You're building lineups, you're playing four-dimensional chess with your own teams and, you know, different managers from around the world. What are they going to be doing? Are they going to rest people? And did they see themselves winning this game, this competition? And you're doing all this stuff. And then it's all about getting the team locked in, get the team built, and then letting it run from there. And for me, that's so much of the fun because that's all that's in our control. And then after that, it is just, you know, you've pulled the trigger, the bullet's flying. You know, like
we were literally just talking before about how I said on the 407 preview last week that I thought scores were going to be really high for rewards this week because we had a lot of big favorites, and it doesn't look like it's playing out that way. And we pretty much realized it was because Sorare managers are not very good and nobody built the right teams. The scores were there, but nobody was able to get like all five together. Like going in, it's Monday midday for me. The first place in All-Star Limited is 499, which sounds high, but is also, I mean, we've seen scores much higher than that. And I definitely expected higher than that for this weekend. But I think we could also see it for this midweek because it's the beginning of European football for the 2023-24 season, Champions League, Europa Conference League. And I feel like whenever you're buying cards and you're like, oh, they have midweek utility, I feel like so much of it is focused on the Champions League. And I'm not sure that's even the best place to get big scores. I mean, obviously there are going to be some situations, and I'm just going to pull up the matchups page right away because Man City is first, by far the biggest favorite. But we've got West Ham, who's in Europa, Bayer Leverkusen who's in Europa, Frankfurt, they're in Conference League, Maccabi Tel Aviv, and you notice I even have a card that I can.
So they are.
I mean, I'm living life here to the fullest because of these games. But
are you Maccabi?
Yeah, I'm all in. Is there any expectation from you that like scores this midweek are going to be really high just because of the kind of the lopsided? I mean, you know, it's going to be big when you don't really even get like a full logo here from the opponents, and you're just like, there are consonants that you've never seen before. And versus clubs that we know we have a ton of cards of. Like, I'm expecting high scores, but maybe you can talk me off of that.
No, I think when it comes to the game week part of all this as well, when I look at the actual game week center, like all the regions are open, like all of them, Asia, America, Champ Euro, Challenger Euro, all the caps, all the scarcities. Maybe the prize pool obviously isn't there like it is in a weekend, but there's still that amount of, you know, availability. And obviously, we've obviously not got the amount of teams, hence the prizes. So this is going to be a real pick your battle game week. I think some of these scores will be mega, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, like each manager can only play one team. How many goalkeepers do you have? You know, and then what colour are they? And then et cetera, et cetera. So I think, you know, like there will be mega scores, but I think there will be a lot of opportunities to be had, particularly maybe even in the cap modes, I suppose, because when you look at the prize pools and the rares, it's pretty juicy, man. You know, like I think under 23s and champion are like 100 odd cards or so. I think All Stars pretty healthy as well. And yeah, it's like good fun, you know. So I think there'll be a lot of cards going in a lot of places that are expecting big scores, and you know, depending on what direction you're going for, then it'll be it's there to be had. I think it's an exciting one for all these little midweek cards, because when you say Maccabi Haifa there, I've got a near Beaton card that, thanks to collection bonuses, etc., is on 16% right now. So he's starting centre mid, I don't know how he's going to score, but he should be doing all the nonsense passing left to right and maybe take some nonsense set pieces. He should get 8A for fun. And hey, if they win, maybe he could drop me a 60 with 16% on top and 220. That could be fun, So
yeah, that definitely plays. I will say I noticed that the lobby is now broken up by scarcity. I don't know if this is new to everybody else. This is new to me. Usually it's grouped by competition. So it's like All-Star Limited, All-Star Rare, All-Star Rare Pro, All-Star Super Rare. But now it's not. I don't know. But
mine has always been like that. That's weird.
Oh, really?
That's new for you. Yeah.
It finally made it across the ocean, that update. Thank you to everybody for joining us live. As always, you can please hit the like button. Mike Basson first in. Surely, he said surely not, but Mike, you are. Now, I will say that there are 2 shows on SorareData today, or on the SorareData YouTube channel. So I appreciate everyone who's here, and especially thankful to anybody who also shows up for the next one. ZM Star here, Quinny, the Sorare podcast kingpin. How do you like that? The creator of Sorare TV, no less. I mean, we've got the biggest of guests here for the first one that we have on the Game Week program. But yeah, appreciate everyone coming in.
Crazy.
Alex Wilson looking forward to the Kings Kangwa versus Man City. That's a tough one. And all of this talk about Champions League and Europa League and Conference League, Pablo does remind us we also have River Plate and a bunch of other Argentine teams that are playing this week. So it's not like it's just the European competitions. There's Asian Champions League going on right now. And then we do have some this midweek as well. I think I saw Al Hilal is not taking, who was it? Koulibaly, SMS, and someone else that they have. Bono. There's only allowed 5 foreign players. Those 3 didn't make the cut. So if you have those players, you're not getting any utility this week.
Ouch. That's a sore one. That is what you expect for those guys when you get, it's like, at least I've got that, but hey, at least before the deadline. That's the only thing you can say is just, hey, just keep them on the shelf. It's just one of those ones.
I will say that my favorite part about this, and Maccabi Tel Aviv is the reason why, but like a lot of blue X cards are now like ready to go to play. You've been sitting on these cards hoping they would get a move back to a covered league, and you're like, oh, blue's better than red. Now we got them this week. So Quinny, do you think the expectation is that most of Man City players are lined up in All-Star because people continue to kind of focus on that for the month long? Or are we going to see Man City, West Ham? I mean, frankly, the top, 5? Man City, West Ham, Bayer Leverkusen, Barcelona, Eintracht Frankfurt, all eligible for Champion Europe. Do you think people play them there or in All-Star?
I think it's more how many kind of fingerprints Man City has. So like Haaland, for example, like who owns Haaland and then where can you play him? I think Haaland, you're only going to find him in All-Star Rare Pro, Under 23 Pro, Champ Pro. Rodrigo or Rodri, tomato, if you're on him to play. And then really beyond that, you're talking about Ederson. The rest of the cards are probably not going to find themselves in too many hard-hitting lineups, you would maybe imagine. Whereas when I look at, like, for example, Leverkusen, who are third in that list, like their squad is like under 23s. Like, there's going to be, they're going to be under 23 lineups all over the place. So Man City, I think it is like that D3 level is where you're going to find, like I mentioned, like Ederson, Rodri, Haaland, and maybe if you fancy a Guardiola, maybe he comes into your thinking somewhere as well. But I think Pep Roulette does put off the serious players generally, and it is more, you'd well normally take some of these guys in a lesser priority lineup just because anything could happen. It's at home to Red Star. Like they could just list a whole different team. You would not be surprised one bit if Scott Carson played this game. Well,
it's funny you bring that up because that is a consideration. I think usually during these during midweek competitions, the later we get, the more like, oh, they've already qualified, so they should rotate. I feel like this early in the season, it's the first one. Most teams surely roll out their top players, right?
With Pep, it's really hard to say. I would say so. I don't imagine there've been many changes from the team at the weekend. Like I would expect Doku to play because I think it's an easy win for him. Going into this game, he should rinse him. So I don't see any reason to take him out, similar to Haaland and a few of the other key players. But again, like, anything could happen. You just never know. The defense in particular, because there is a few really interchangeable players there, that maybe Rico Lewis plays or something like that. So it needs to be the key players, I think, if you're going into City.
Is there, I'm not super familiar with it, and obviously they haven't played yet. Actually, before I get into that, everyone will notice on this page that there's a ton of red, which doesn't make any sense for big favorites. Most of this is because the matchup indicators and the opponent scores are based on competition. And so we don't have these competitions yet. So we don't have data from who's Leverkusen playing. I can't even, what is that? Hacken? Sure. We don't have like how they've done in the Champions League because there hasn't been any. So early on, these numbers do get a little wonky. This is when I try to basically rely more on the sportsbook odds to give me an indication of how lopsided some of these are. And so like West Ham, is like Fabianski going to start these games? I know there was like this thought that he would play. Somebody mentioned, where is it? Glenn said with Ghent, we don't know if it's going to be Rofe or Nardi. And we're kind of in that, a lot of these situations where like, we're not quite sure. Hopefully there's like news that comes out that helps people, but it is something to look to, because just looking at like last weekend's lineup, basically both of these teams, Man City and West Ham, are the two biggest favorites for the midweek. We could see some changes here, but we don't really know. Obviously, we don't know what they are. So there is kind of this risk, even with these top teams going into the game week.
Yeah. I think West Ham, they're more likely to stick to their best team as well, because getting through that group for them, like, although it's probably equally as certain, they still need to make it happen, and after that game at the weekend, Moyes won't take that game lightly. I think you can see full strength West Ham, and you can, if you're building the West Ham stack, then you can dream your dreams. I think this game week, that you can nail on, the main kind of stack to go with for the main James Ward-Prowse to play.
So Alex Wilson brings up a really good point. He says that I think it's why I think Championship is good, because there's constant midweek utility. If we do go to the second division Europe, obviously it's just filled with the Championship for this week. Nothing is really, like, nothing jumps out. Millwall is the biggest favorite, which, okay, like, I don't think you're going to take any of these players realistically and compete in all-star. I would say that these players are probably best for either competing in second division, where I assume the prizes aren't that great. 34 prizes in second division Europe rare, 8 in Rare Pro. But you can use them in cap modes and stuff, but it still doesn't even feel like it is going to end up being like, you can compete for your threshold, fine. But if you're actually like, maybe I'll win like a really good card in cap 240, 270, it just doesn't seem like they're going to come from second division Europe players this week.
Beyond goalkeepers at the moment, I do struggle to want to get into second division cards. Like, I like the goalkeepers for the amount of games they get. Generally, a lot of them, not a lot of them, but you can find enough of them that are stable number ones, and it's then just price and availability. It's then the kind of wrestle you've got. So I'm definitely a big fan of the goalkeepers for the kind of the token element that they present. You can just play them what was that list? Gunn, Backman, Wilson. I don't know if Wilson's the Coventry guy, but I think the Coventry guy is pretty good. I forget what his name is. It might be Wilson, but yeah, so I can get that. But yeah, looking at those fixtures, nothing jumps out. But I suspect if you look at the Championship, see, once you get to because it's like a 40-game season, see, once you get to game 18 to 20, see if a team is cut and buried at the bottom, then you can mark, them out. And if sometimes the Championship, there maybe get 3 or 4 of them as the season drags out. And then sometimes you can see where they'll definitely get a clean sheet, or they should score 3 or 4 against them, or whatever the case may be. So it's maybe one of those ones that as it goes, and we've seen that with La Liga second division last season, when that goalkeeper kept keeping clean sheets, all of a sudden people were just hey, they just keep doing it. So they're obviously pretty good at it. So let's go for it.
Right. If I can get 73 every game week, then I'll just do it. I don't care who they play for or what they do. A quick look at the pick scores. I just pulled them up. These are just for second division Europe limited. We've got 3 guys that are AAA, and this is AAA in second division. So I imagine they're not probably AAAs in All-Star or any others, but we've got basically Norwich, Watford, Leicester at the top, and Millwall with Fleming. So I don't think there's anything that surprising. And if you
Yeah,
have these
I would say
players,
so.
like I think they're all fine. But again, competing with the likes of Man City and all the other all-star teams, it just doesn't seem worth it to me this week. I do think that there are some weeks where the second division guys can compete, and you have like the two Bundesliga can be really high scoring sometimes, and you can get some set piece takers and some sort of forward who just seems to score every week. It's just really tough this game week with these. We haven't even scrolled down, but like most of these teams are at least 70% to win, and even in situations of teams that we know are really good, like we have Arsenal, 69% chance to beat PSV. And like we all know PSV can be very good, but now it's like, oh, they're actually against a bigger club, which they tend not to be. We've got Salzburg away to Benfica, so Benfica's a decent favorite. And then you get the wonderful Inter Miami at home against Toronto and River Plate at home against, I think that was Tucumán, right?
Yeah.
So
some fantastic fixtures. And Bayern are going to rinse Man United as well. That's going to be destruction. Like, I don't know if you've seen Man United at the weekend, but Jesus Christ, like Man United.
Bayern haven't been so I'm glad you brought that up, because I was looking at lineups yesterday and I was going through the players that I had.
Ooh.
So I have a Bruno Fernandes, and I noticed Bruno Fernandes is actually, at least yesterday, was a AAA. And I thought to myself, let me see here. So he still is. And I was like, away to Bayern seems like an absolutely terrible matchup. But I think you can make the argument that Bayern haven't been even good defensively. And so Bayern could win 5-2, and you could still get your 89, 90 from Bruno, and it would be okay. I still can't convince myself to play Bruno in like my best lineup. But the more I dug into it, the more I was like, all right, Bayern are better. I do think that they will win this game. I think they'll probably dominate it, but they're absolutely prone to a mistake that somebody like Bruno Fernandes can take advantage of, get his decisive. Is he going to get 95 with just one decisive? Probably not, but 75 is probably not out of the question. I don't think.
Totally. I think I do think Man United can get a goal or two in this game, and like you say, Bruno Fernandes, that's all that needs to happen, and you're walking out there with a big fat green score. So I'm totally with you on that one. I think with Bayern in particular, I think it's going to be a bit of the Kane show. I think Kane will score a couple of goals, and I think it will just be a bit of that Bayern might. But like you say, Bayern are not invincible, and they might even play the Israeli kids for all we know, but they'll probably play Ulreich, at this point. So yeah, Man United have always got a chance. I think they'll score a goal or so. And I think with Bruno, the only worry is, if you would have a worry, and I'm not holding Bruno, so I've not been tracking his minutes, but it's just minutes. Is he a guy that maybe if you get booked after 60 minutes and the game was dead, is he a guy that gets subbed off maybe? That's the only thing that would maybe linger at the back of my mind. And maybe put him in a second or third team or something like that, because he can still do it. That's just a wee negative thing that would just sit at the back of my mind with a guy like that. Maybe.
One of the things that I want to go back to, just to like make everyone, I hate to say this, to make everyone just like give an extra look to the Pixel stuff this week. We do have some data from like qualifiers and stuff. So we have Rennes, who are at home against Maccabi Haifa, I believe. 68% chance to win, which we saw was not really the highest that we're going to get to. Like, there are probably 25 clubs that are more likely to win. Now, again, winning doesn't necessarily mean they're going to score 5-6 goals. But when I pulled this up, I was like, man, there are a lot of Rennes players at the top of the list. And part of it is just because their opponent scores are particularly bad from qualifying. Obviously, they were good enough to get through. But those are some of the things that go into the pick score. And so if there's ever a week to be particularly questioning of the pick score, it's this one, and requires more, I think, just more individual research to make sure, like, wait, does this matchup actually make sense? And can I expect such a good score out of these guys? Or is it just because whoever they're playing isn't very good? Like, I don't think these guys are bad plays, but there may be better plays where we just don't have enough opponent data, and so they don't move up. Is there anyone that kind of jumped out at you that you're like, wait a minute, why is he here, either good or bad?
No, I actually think that's pretty decent. Rennes at home to Maccabi, that should be a pretty good result for Rennes, to be honest with you. So I've got no problems with them being up there as well. I think Kane should be AAA rated because he'll be on penalties, and Man United and everything else that goes around that. So yeah, but when I was looking at that, it all looks quite hunky-dory to me. I think, Mbappe, I don't know about being AAA. I suppose Dortmund will concede goals, I suppose. But it's all about the competition, I think, more than anything. And when I'm looking to that rating, as well as like the little blue icon underneath their name, it's more like certainty that they're going to play. And then just, what is the game looking like? Oh yeah, they are favoured. Actually, I did think that, for example, Bayern Munich would be the favourites in this match. Oh yeah, see Harry Kane up there. That makes sense. AAA rated. Oh no, he might not do this. I know that might not happen. But yeah, so I get, kind of all the scores that are up here. It doesn't please me to see Stengs up there against Celtic. I'm not looking forward to seeing him maybe play this week. Kimmich as well looks great as well. I think, honestly, Bayern Munich are going to be one of the headlines shows of the week. I think they're going to run them over so badly.
I do want to point out that, as I keep looking, that none of the projected lineups are like, once this icon here turns black is when we feel more comfortable that enough people who are good at projecting have projected these lineups. Because Johannes has pointed out that the lineup projections just aren't that good for the midweek. I think part of it is that people have absolutely no idea, or we don't have enough people who know. And so it's one of those that maybe the 5 people who really know them have put theirs in, but we won't necessarily want to just rely on those 5. I do think that we could see some significant changes between now and when the deadline comes, which is like 22 and a half hours from now. We might get some press conferences today that guys that played on the weekend and we thought would be okay, and it turns out they're actually not going to play in the midweek, or just trying to give guys some rests. News comes out today. I mean, unfortunately, it comes out Tuesday also, and that doesn't help us for the further matches. But there should be some movement today, I think, with the projected lineups, that if you're looking at it today and you're like, this looks way off, it's possible that it will look better tomorrow or later today. And also, I'm just going to make this plea and plug to everybody. If something looks wrong, like, you can go in and say, no, this guy is actually not going to start. Put in your pick. The easiest way to do it is, I'm just doing this from the pick score page, but if you literally like click on Mbappe, and over here on the right side of his page, you can just select that he's going to start. It's like as simple as that. And then, so I have had many conversations with people of like whether it's better to do this or not. For everybody who doesn't love the lineup projections, like they're like, oh, they're never right. If you can make them more right, I feel like you should just help and make them more right. So
yeah,
anyway,
I can dig it.
That's my plea. So I'm going to let's look at America, just because I feel like I'm contractually obligated to, because there are America competitions this week. We do have, like I said, there's some MLS. There, to be honest, I didn't look ahead to this game week at all. And I went to the lineup builder yesterday and I was like, I have a ton of cards this week. Like, after the international break, and I was just used to getting to a midweek and just being like, I got nothing. I got a ton of cards this week. I don't know how I feel yet about America cards in All-Star, but it does seem like there are a few. Ricky Puig is the top Champion America limited player this week, home against Minnesota. That does look like a card you could just rip right into All-Star or U23.
Yeah, it's cost 73. You can't play that in a cap. That's just not happening. So,
right.
So yeah, you're kind of screwed on that one in terms of even thinking about it. But yeah, totally. Like L5 at 80, bring it on. And yeah, under 20. Like we mentioned some of those teams earlier on, like Haaland's and stuff like that, under 23 pro, All-Star pro. And I think like those upper echelon players, that's where they're all going to find themselves this game week, because we were hearing quite a lot on this channel in particular about the importance of getting an international smasher scores for your monthly. And hey, if you got one of them, maybe this is you double dipping. And if you didn't get one of them, maybe this is your chance to, get them, So depends what you're playing, and I say it depends on your modes. But when I look at, like, I've I don't know if you know Laird, right? But Ryan Gauld, he's playing away from home, so he's absolutely terrible. He can't be playing. We should all sell our Ryan Gaulds now because he's playing so many games away from home. But he's up there still as AAA rated. I don't know what they're thinking about, So, but he's away from home again, and at 71 rated. I love playing him in All-Star Rare Pro or All-Star Rare because, hey, he's away from home.
So for those of you who are unaware, I was like adamant about selling Ryan Gauld right around here when he got his back-to-back yellow cards. I was like, oh, he's got a ton of away games coming up, and he's responded with, what is that, 3, 4, 5, 6 decisives in 4 games, including a full 100 this past game week. What's funny is that before this game week, I was like, yeah, but his AA is down. And then he got 45 AA this weekend. So
the full resurrection of Gauld.
Yeah.
He's fully back.
He's been incredible. So I looked ahead a little bit. So Ricky Puig right here is the top player in Champion America. Where do you think he falls pick score wise for under 23 this week? Under 23 limited this week.
AAA? Or is it percentage? Yeah.
He's AAA. He's the 5th. I would say he's the 5th highest card, 4th highest player. Because the Verts cards, we have forward and midfielder. But this is, I mean, you can go through here and just be like, where are the America cards that stand out in U23? And we've got Puig, Aiden Morris, Jesus Ferreira. Wow. It's not a ton, but like those guys, at least from a matchup point of view, there's John Tolkien. You can play some of these guys. And totally. Yeah, I mean, even Callum Doyle here, when we were talking about second division before, there's, I think you can get away with some of those guys, but obviously, do you think Puig is a better play in U23 or All-Star or America this week?
Well, he's the best play in America because no one else will have him there. So it's an easy, if he does smash, it's 80 points the field won't have in that respect. But I think, if you've got him, you've got to use him in under 23 because if he's not been on that great form for that long, I'm surprised to see his L5 that dark, to be honest with you. Last time I looked at him, he wasn't that amazing, So if the going's good, you need those cards and you need them surrounded with good stuff, yeah, with the going's good kind of thing. So when was that game week 401? That wasn't so long ago. Yeah, he's still in good form. I know he's had a wee off game or two without the decisives there, but even one of them still 24 AA, that's tidy. So yeah, I think you've got to play those guys where they were intended to be played, and if you got them to play under 23s, then if you've got the team, then that's where to roll with it, because the field isn't full. We do have a lot of things in America and Europe and whatever, but it's not everyone. It's only really the best teams in Europe that are playing, to a greater or lesser extent throughout the pyramid itself, or throughout the food chain.
Yeah, I think, and there's no LAFC is home against St. Louis. Actually, I didn't go to the matchups. Let's see that's the easiest way for me to really tell where everyone is. It's definitely a messy week. He's got to play this week. He didn't play against Atlanta on the weekend, but now home against Toronto on a midweek. Toronto did play this past week at a mess. I think this is going to sound absurd, but I think it's also appropriate. Anything less than 100, and I think you're disappointed with your Messi card this week.
Yeah, for sure. I think when I had him in the common mode at PSG, anything less than 85, I was pretty gutted. If it was 84, 83, for God's sake, I should have got Mbappe, or should have had Neymar, that's what you're thinking, because that's the level these guys need to get to in terms of SO5 terms to be that impressive, to be the clear 1% above everyone else, is 88, 92, 98, 98, 100, that's the scores they need to be bashing out. And if you've got wee bits of XP, obviously, generally they'll then deliver a 100 score, because once you get to 10% of 92, you're at 101 or something. So they always then feel like 100, even if it's not. But when it's 84, 83, you're not really getting there still. And it's even with boosts and stuff, it's maybe not as exciting.
I'll give credit to my good friend Andy Black, who said after he got his Messi card that every time he puts it in a lineup and he starts tracking the game, he just figures out how many points below 100 like that. He doesn't. Every other player, you're like, I hope you just watch the score go up. And in Messi, you start at 100 and you just hope it stays there instead of just in your mind of where it should finish. So, and this is, I mean, not that every week isn't a 100 week for Messi, but like, man, does it feel like a 100 week for Messi this time? And obviously we have River Plate. River Plate played last night, and maybe we see some rotation. It's one of those that I'm guessing we'll find out plenty of news like after the deadline, unfortunately. So there's that. And then Columbus at home against Chicago. All those Cucho cards. We saw Aiden Morris high on the U23 and America list. So I think we'll see those guys there.
Columbus is a really strong home team as well. So I think that's definitely one that if you have those guys, like that's a fun one to play. You know, the main thing I like about these situations, like kind of with the gold joke earlier, and like even with a Columbus play, is like you only need one guy that you know is like, oh, he'll bring in the 70, he'll bring in the 80, you know, from that team. You don't need the full stack necessarily, depending on what else is going on in your gallery. But because this week, that's the kind of scores you need, and it doesn't really matter where you get them from. It's about just finding them and try to put them together. This is the first time I've seen this tab, so this will be fun.
Let me just give Kev Hurd some props here. Columbus at home is a good one. Also, Diego Rossi should have a pretty good matchup in that one. And Pablo saying River will not be rotating, which is music to my ears. Absolutely. So the Asia list looks very different, and I think people care about this a lot more than they used to. The tricky thing is that, and I've pretty much seen this from a number of people, that getting Asia Champions League odds has been really tough. Like not a lot of sports books have them. And so this is kind of where we end up putting a lot of emphasis on looking at previous results, meaning opponents and how they've been doing in their leagues and whatnot, because it's possible that we don't get two teams that we know. I mean, we've got Urawa traveling to Wuhan 3 towns, which is a personal nemesis of mine, but I would assume that Wuhan are favored in that game. But like, honestly, I just haven't looked at it enough for myself. And then, you know, we've got Pohang, John Buck, Al Nasser, and did we have, I thought Al Hilal was.
I think some of those ones are really tough to call, right? But I know from like betting in a previous life that there's some of those leagues that are thoroughly like undeveloped, you know, like Thailand and Singapore and some of these places. So depending on, like I see Kitchi there. I think Kitchi are from Singapore, and they appear to be away to Jeonbuk. So if Jeonbuk are at home to a team from Singapore, then I think that's pretty good. And then I see Hanoi there. I think they're from Vietnam. They're at home to Pohang. So again, like if you've got a Pohang stack, depending on what it's like to play away at Vietnam, I don't know what the head-to-head will be on that one or whatever, but maybe look into that. But otherwise, like a team from Vietnam, you know, shouldn't be too much of a problem for a K-League mega team, you know, you'd think. And some of those scores can be mental.
Moldy's saying that Wuhan have lost some of their best players, which I'll just completely take their word for it. I wouldn't even know who their best players were. Kevin Hurt said Al Ittihad and Al Hilal have pretty big odds to win today. I think I did see that Benzema is not going to play today, though. And so that's too late, obviously, for the midweek because they're not in the midweek. They're playing today, but just something to look after that. And again, what I mentioned before, that the Asian Champions League, I believe they're allowed to bring 5 foreign players. And so there are some of these Saudi Arabian teams that bought more, you know, bought 8, 9 foreign players. So not all of them are going to be able to play. So definitely, you know, do your own research on that in terms of like which ones have been called up, because you definitely don't want to be in a situation where you think you've got your Milinkovic Savic card this week and it turns out you don't. So, yeah.
I think if you have those cards, you're committed to keeping up to date with the beat on what's going on. So definitely
right about that.
I
think it's also pretty clear that most people are not playing these cards in Champion Asia this game week, even in a situation where, well, maybe actually, I don't even know. Like if I had a John Buck stack, maybe I'd play them in Asia. Let me see. What are the what kind of rewards are we seeing here? 49 in rare and 10 in rare pro.
They don't look at it like that, right? So look at, there's 53 entrants in rare pro, right? Open up the prize pool. 53. If you reckon, so what did we say? John Book, they were playing a team from like
Vietnam, I think.
Yeah, from not a very. Yeah, it was Vietnam or something like that, wasn't it? So if you get a John Book team that can smash, like, it's the podium's what you want to look at. So 175 quid plus a tier 2, 250 quid in the tier 1, 360 quid in a star. Because there's only 50 people in it. You know what I mean? So if you've got a team that you reckon is going to hit, you've got like 20% chance of coming close. You know, like, and as long as you're close, then you're into it.
Yeah. This is your star pool here. I don't know. You want to win these cards?
I'd take a Schultz.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right.
But like, hey, if you've
Fair
got
for the taking, Quinny.
You need to, if you've got the team, then why not? Because again, like, some people again might take the goalkeeper, maybe a solid clean sheet shout, you know, and maybe the goalkeeper, a lot of people play that goalkeeper on All-Star. Maybe he's a really good cap pick this week, you know, as well. So again, there'll be a wee bit of a grain to go against as well if you do have those cards, you know.
Yep, that's fair. Moldy was saying how they can register all the players, but they can only take 5 for each match day squad. And so we could see players moving in and out. As Moldy says, can't imagine Neymar going to the away games in India and Iran. We'll find out.
I can see him in India. Maybe not Iran, but I can see him in India.
A lot of people to buy some Neymar jerseys in India.
But I was going to say, by the way, Iran have got some of the best teams in that Champions League. See, the ones that go deep in the competitions, and generally, like, other teams don't beat them. It's like one of them teams are playing it. There's a few of them. One of them's called like Tractor Sazi or something like that. That's what I call them. Or it's like Terrica Tractor is what it looks like, but it's like Sazi. And then there's a few other teams over there anyway. But it's a weird, so I don't think they'll go to Iran. No, maybe that's why they win when they're at home. Maybe maybe they send the B teams and they win all their home games. Or something.
The scattered knowledge of Iranian football clubs is the perfect reason why you are the ideal person to have on this show. Let's jump into Challenger, which looks broken with Barcelona leading the way. Oh, it's because they're playing a Challenger team. Okay, I get it. So let's see who is realistically on this list. Zagreb, home to, who is that? Astana.
Yes.
We've got Benfica against Salzburg, right? Yeah. Ghent, Fenerbahce, Feyenoord, Galatasaray against Copenhagen. Shout out to the Sorare Scandinavia Discord. Porto against Shakhtar. Are any of these, like, they don't seem so big that we want to focus? Like, it actually seems like because their matchups aren't so great, maybe we actually should play them in Challenger this week instead of in All-Star. What do you think about that?
It's a very interesting thought, because there's no I don't see any smasher plays there. I don't see any. Yeah, I definitely don't see a fixture you're going to run towards into Challenger. I feel like
Zagreb is probably the only one. Like, Benfica are big favorites, but like Salzburg's a tough opponent.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a pushover game for Benfica. I'm definitely with you on that one. That's definitely like Sorare knowledge versus the bookie. I think we definitely know that's not as much of a gimme as they might think, because Salzburg haven't went out and spent big money this summer, and they've lost Sesko, and they've probably let a few others go as well. So yeah, I'm with you on that one for sure. Galatasaray are quite heavily favoured in this game as well, and I would probably go along that Galatasaray are probably strong favourites to beat Copenhagen. But again, like, if Copenhagen scored a couple of goals and the game became quite tight, and it could go either way really when it's all said and done. AZ, they're always good in Europe. I see them against a wee grey badge.
Who we got here? Oh boy.
Oh yeah, sign me up. AZ, there we go.
It's a Zrinski.
Bosnia.
Yeah, something like that. I was going to say that, for Galatasaray. So this is the group, a lot of people have been talking about this. Galatasaray, Copenhagen, Bayern Munich, Man United. Like, this is Galatasaray's easiest matchup of the entire group stage. Like, it does, not to say that Copenhagen's going to roll over, but every other matchup is going to be harder than this. So maybe they come out and just pump them and say, hey, we are strong enough to win this group or something like that, just to show off a little bit, while Bayern and Man United just kind of slap it out with each other. But
it's the same. It's the same dynamic for a lot of these clubs, Celtic especially. You know, that's the way it is for us, where it's like us v Feyenoord for third, really, is what you're expecting to start with, you know. And then if you can overcome that challenge, then you can maybe talk about or dream about whatever else. So I think Galatasaray will see it that way, being at home. And they've spent big enough, you know. In the Champions League, they're actually blessed. They can play all their foreign players that they want now. They've got their squad registered, and now they can pick whoever they want from it. So Galatasaray, maybe that might be the undoing of them. Maybe if it's a team that's never really kicked a ball together, if you get me. But I don't think so. I think they'll probably have too much on the day for it. But it's definitely going to be the match state of this group stage is very important for everyone to be aware of at the moment, because once you get to match day 4, 5, and 6, the game state, the group stage state, everything is totally different to now. Yeah. You know, some people are dead. Some people are thinking, you know, blah, blah, blah. So while everyone is punching, you know, that's what you've got to think, who is going to deliver, you know, who is going to get the points, who's going to take the free kick, you know.
Charlie Dunbar just loves himself a grey badge fixture, which, I mean, realistically is something that we should consider. There are some big challenger clubs that we know that have tough matchups, as we see Ajax, although Ajax have been dreadful. Ajax at home against Marseille. Besiktas away to Club Brugge, another challenger club, and kind of as you go down the list, it just gets worse and worse. Obviously, the teams on the other side of the matchups we want to focus on, you know, home to Liverpool at least, but there's PSV away to Arsenal and the Salzburg one, and Aberdeen doesn't look good for Aberdeen this week, away to Eintracht Frankfurt. So. Or Antwerp away to Barcelona. But let me. What are the rewards?
Antwerp, I'll give them Antwerp are probably more banana skin capable than a lot of other kind of, let's say, wild outside favourites or outside odds teams. You know, Antwerp are definitely a wee bit more banana skin capable, I think. You know, because they could just defend like mad. I think they play 5 at the back anyway, so. You know, like, you never know. Stranger things have happened, is all I would say. If you've got Antwerp cards, dream.
That's
feel
fair.
Free.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a while since we have seen cards against Barcelona and we're like, no way, you cannot play them. Maybe a goalie, but usually I don't think there's any.
Yeah,
I don't know. Although João Felix, guy's red hot now.
Mate, yeah. I was going to message you this morning about him, but I thought, oh no, I'll see you anyway. You must be buzzing. Did you play him at the weekend?
Sort of. I played him, but I did not. It wasn't in anything that I thought would have a chance. I did captain him though. That's my favorite move of like, oh, it's not a priority, but I'll captain him so I'll look smart. And then I'll take a screenshot of just him and everybody will think I'm doing really well, but he was probably my only player. The challenger, I don't know. I think you could make the argument that challenger, if you have challenger players, that you can play them in the Challenger Europe competitions. We've got I was talking to, I think it was Sean last week, of like challenger players. So the star pool packed with goalies. It's Joey Veerman, and then was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight goalies. Paul Nardi, Kavlina joining them. If you want a challenger goalie, well, I guess you got to finish first place to get one of these guys. Man.
That's probably fine, because the rest of the pools are probably full of fun players in tier 2s and stuff. So, like, I'm seeing tier 3, right? So tier 3 is 15 to 53. That's a fun. Like, let's imagine we can finish in the top 50 somewhere. Would we want to win some of these guys? That's what I'd be thinking.
Actually, won Bell Honda recently. I think it was an all-star though. But Lubicic, Big Bob Scoofs. I mean, one of my favorite things, and people who are newer to Sorare don't appreciate this as much, but there was a time where winning a tier 3, that was the last tier, and you were just like, I got a tier 3. But now these guys are very usable players that you will be excited to win. At least some of them are, not all of them. It used to be that it was like 1 in 1,000 you would have even heard of the guy, but now, well, most of us would have heard. I'm sure Quinny knew all of them right away, but
no, I didn't.
But All right, champion. Obviously, when we saw that a lot of champion clubs were at the top of the All-Star, so they're going to be top of champion here as well. Man City, West Ham, Leverkusen, Barcelona, Frankfurt, Lille. Who is Lille playing? I don't know that logo.
Oof, that's like Ludogorets maybe. That's my guess. No, Ljubljana. That'll be Slovenia. I think who's the team below that? Lille again. That was another one that looked good as well.
Atalanta.
Yeah, who have they got? I don't recognise that badge.
Rakow. Czestochowa.
That'd be a Polish team, maybe. Rakow. That'd be fun. Atalanta have got a good game at home. If you've got Atalanta cards, Atalanta's not really a stacked team, are they? There you go. But Coop's coming good. I've got him in common. Coop is Killer Coop again, King Cooper, whatever we're going to call him. But he's happening again. And
coming off a decisive this past game week.
He's coming good. He's getting back. He's getting back up there, you know.
Oh, these were international fixtures, so let's just take those out, make him look even better. He's getting there. He's got 100 in his. I guess that was last season, end of last season. Literally finished the season with 100. But yeah, I mean, if there's ever a week you can play your Atalanta boys, this is it. Brighton against AEK, Liverpool. I mean, man, we could see.
Liverpool are kind of the antithesis of what you don't want, because them playing Thursday, you do. I'm not playing Robertson. I think it's going to be expected. Alisson's 50-50 by all accounts as well. Maybe it's Kelleher that plays.
Wow.
Klopp's got form for it. Liverpool have got form for it. So, like, some of the champion Euro cards, depending on... Now, Liverpool have got this away to Austria, match day 1. Maybe they'll rotate, maybe they don't. But you know they'll do it at some point. It is Europa League. And really, you know, anyway. But so... some of these teams now need to win their games or want to win their games because of their direct opponent. But in some of these other games, particularly in Champion Euro, some of these other cards, you might see some of these random rotations that kill you, or a DNP that you didn't see coming. But you would think match day 1 should be the most predictable. You would think one of the most predictable. Yeah,
looking at this at the community projections, they do have Kelleher more likely to start than Alisson. Let's see. We've got Van Dijk, Konate. Yeah, Robertson. Everybody's guessing he'll be benched.
Yeah. Simicast got a new contract, for example, so it'd be weird for Simicast not to play this game. It's made for him, you know.
Yep. Charlie Dunbar here said West Ham on the weekend, doubt they go full strength. What does like a rotated West Ham even look like?
I don't think West Ham rotate for this game. They're at home, aren't they? I don't think they rotate at all.
They are at home, yeah.
There's no chance they rotate, I don't think. They were at home to City, they're at home in this game, and then maybe they're away the next match in the league, that's fine. But yeah, I think you play this the best team again and go get 3 points, get the fans on board, you know. Guys like David Moyes are always making sure they're not getting sacked. And a big part of that is when you know you're going to spank a team, spank them. Like, you know, make sure you beat teams once in a while, you know.
I think that's absolutely something that people tend to overlook, but it's exactly what you said. And in particular, like Moyes is such a great example, but you're right. Like if there are situations where you should spank a team, you need to do it. And so this is his situation right here. Coming off a tough one on the weekend, like this past weekend. I don't know who they have next weekend, but it doesn't even matter. Like they're looking theoretically toward, let's see, they've got, I was looking. Who's West Ham got this weekend? They're away to Liverpool on the weekend. Oof. Boy, that's a stretch. Whew.
Yeah. Tough.
And then they've got EFL Cup next to it. What do they call that these days? Is that sponsored somehow?
Yeah,
probably. Carabao still?
But that's where you rotate, you know, probably for some of these teams, you know, because Moyes, West Ham, again, you need to know some of the clubs on this one. I'm not saying like anyone doesn't or anything, but some of these clubs like West Ham really do pride themselves on that European stuff. That's what Moyes is kind of built his little career on at West Ham, not to demean it in any way, of course. So I don't think that, you know, they want points on the board quickly. Similar to Rennes, when we were talking about them earlier, they quite like being in Europe as well. You know, they don't take it lightly either, so they'll probably take it quite seriously. I think Brighton will be really interesting, right? Because Brighton do have a bit of a squad. They did rotate a lot at the weekend. Like the squad at the weekend, I think they made like something like 7 changes from the game prior or something, or maybe I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was significant enough.
Yeah, it was a lot.
So interesting to see how their rotation pattern is now going to kick into gear, perhaps. Maybe they've done some sort of swap around with Man United. They played the B team against Man U, maybe, and then they're going to play the A team in Europe now. Or whatever, I don't know. But yeah,
that was a
want to watch out for.
full-fledged, like, and maybe not a full B team, but it was definitely a rotated side. And then to win 3-1 at Old Trafford is pretty big. Just to clear some up, Charlie was talking about Liverpool rotating because they played West Ham at the weekend, not West Ham rotating. So apologies for that. Kev Hurd said Tsimikas and Gravenberch are in his cap 220 teams this week, which yeah, that's where this is it. Yeah,
good 220 play. If he does play, man, he could do quite okay.
I think you could make the argument that there are better plays in 240 than 220.
I think so.
Like the prize pools alone for me, like cap 220, first place gets a tier 1. You need to finish in a podium to get tier 2, and then top 20 basically to finish in the tier 3. And let's see. Obviously, many more people are competing in 240.
Yeah, but for a 220 team, you're not fishing for that. I think for a 240 team, like if you look at where tier 4s go from 83rd to 187, I think the caliber of team in 240 needs to get in there. Like some of these cards aren't going to make it there for you. But when you look at 220, it's similar kind of spots. It goes back to 126 for a tier 4, for a tier 5, 127, but it goes back to 336. So it's like a tier down, and the caliber, I think, is way diminished. Like, you still need some decent scores in this division because you can mix that limited in, and some people use that as the cheat code element. But this is the first week as well, so everything I'm saying is kind of redundant because everything's out the window now because there's no XP in this division as well as 240 and whatever. But generally, I've found like a guy like that, you're probably better with him in 220 because I can fit guys into 240 that are like Ladero or Was, or before he's hit this form, Gold would kind of sometimes fit in at 240 if you played some like a 33 defender or something, And I think so many of those plays are in 240 that somebody like Gravenberch, the fun ones, I think you have to have them in 220 and just if they can fit, because him doing like a 70 or something, it's way more impressive in 220 than in 240. Same as Tsimikas is maybe different. He's probably cheat code 240. Because he's clean sheet capable, if you think about the defender side of things, for the points.
I want to disagree, but I feel like the examples here are not giving me the best. Like, I think Tsimikas is a great play in 240. I think he's a better play in 240 than in 220. Like, I think you should, I think if you have comparable lineups, comparably competitive lineups, that you should go for 240 and not 220. The problem, so Tsimikas, I think, has, like, he could be on some set pieces. They're probably getting a clean sheet. And like, I think you can reasonably hope for like 80 out of Tsimikas. I don't think you can get that out of Gravenberch. And as much as like people love Gravenberch, he's just like never really been that player to give you monster scores. I mean, we see them here 3 years ago when he was at Ajax, but I'm just not sure you're going to get the same. But if you play both of them, you can play Gald in 240. And if you're in a situation where maybe you don't have enough America players where you can play a really competitive America lineup with Gald, I don't think just Gald is enough for All-Star. I think going after 240 is okay. This is part of my like recent.
I couldn't play Gravenberch in 240. I could play Tsimikas in 240, but I couldn't play Gravenberch. He could only go into 220 for me, somebody like him, because I'm not even convinced he's going to get minutes. Like you say, he does start the game. You could get subbed off at halftime. You could get subbed off at 55. There's no guarantee he's get 90 to go. Tsimikas gets 90, so like you can play him. You can kind of play him in more places, of course, but
so I think, like I said, I think Gravenberch set me up for failure on this argument because he's not really the type of player that is the case. But I think if you have these guys that will rotate in, like Tsimikas, that just because they have a very low L15 doesn't mean you should just immediately slap them into 220. Like, I think putting out a really competitive 240 lineup is okay. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's better than just like, oh, I'll just throw these guys into 220 and I'll just play my 240 guys to get the threshold. Like, I think it's reasonable to try to build a competitive 240 lineup, even on a midweek.
Yeah, I think particularly with like, particularly when we're looking at it for this kind of squad lens, like I think the 220 really should be your insurance policy, guys, if you know what I mean. So if you're playing like the Simicast and I don't know, let's just say Soboslai, because you reckon maybe he plays just to get them over the line, go and get some goals or whatever. But you think Gravenberch will play and you think, oh, it could be his night. And you play him in 220, and then if it is his night, at least you've played him and he's been in a wee team somewhere and it could do something for you. Because 220 is hard to take competitively, but I do think if you get to whatever scarcity we're talking about, once you've got to enough cards, you will have a team for 220 that is full of guys that you're like, oh, wow, he's not in a team. Oh, shucks. Like, I thought that he was actually maybe a bit of a good play this one. That's a bit of a shame he's in 220. You'll collect a few of these guys, and sometimes those team sides they're meant to be fun, But equally, if you're a new and up and coming kind of gallery, I suppose you can maybe be a wee bit more competitive and maybe cherry pick some of the other scarcity, particularly commons. If you can just draft some commons in and out, you could really have a lot of fun at limited for doing that. Filling out your extra man, pick your goalkeeper every week or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely the important consideration. I just wanted to jump back into the prize pool that top 82 win a tier 3 up to a tier 3 in cap 240 rare.
Nice.
And 220 tier 3s stop at 21st. Now, obviously, there are a lot more lineups in 240, but I do think most people are here saying, I just need to score. Well, now it's 280. So they're not playing really to win these cards for that.
Some buzz in it. First game week with XP. You looking forward to it?
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I'll make that the last one. I think we went through all of the matchups. All of the things that we showed on screen are available to SorareData Star members. So if you're interested in all of that stuff, grab a membership, and all of those are available. Everything is updated throughout the week. When we get new odds, they're updated on the site. When lineup projections are updated, those go into the pick scores. And so, like I said, everything's not going to be drastically different, but there will be some changes between now where we have 22 hours to the deadline. And when we get to 2 hours before the deadline, there could be some changes. So just keep using those pages and you'll check it out. So Quinny, this is the first game week where we have XP in cap 240 and cap 220. Do you think your lineup building process is any different because of that?
Well, I don't think I've made it different this week, but it's definitely going to change everything now because like XP, like as much as it doesn't make a difference, I kind of mentioned it earlier when we were talking about, I can't remember what it was, but like when you've got guys that are hitting, it's not like, oh, I get an extra 2 points on the guy next to me or whatever. But if you've got players that are dropping like 80, 90 points, them dropping an extra 10, 12, 13% on top, like that's a real difference maker, So having them in the cap modes, which is where we know, obviously the thresholds in 240, we all love that for limited rare, never super rare, and whatever else. But if you're aspiring to get into 270 and get like the best cards, the best tier of cards and stuff like that, then that's a great leveler into that kind of field as well. So I think, it's also always been there in 270, but now you've got that, you can actually just move your guys up and down and you don't have that human inane like thing that stops you from putting a high XP card into cap mode, because you just can't do it. So it's just stopping yourself from yourself in that sense, isn't it?
I think that's such a good point. And I actually went the other way, that obviously if I had a card that had high XP and it was like, man, it just feels legitimately wasted in 240 before today. But now I'm the other way, that if I have a card with low XP, I'm like, I can't play that in 240. No way. Let me play it in another competition, as if it hasn't been low XP in those competitions this entire time. There's something about it where it's like, no, this XP is actually more important, even though you could even argue it's less important because the other competitions give out better prizes and I should be trying to get those as high. But yeah, I think we've gotten to the point now with, and maybe well, actually, it's not even just you and I because we have a lot of older cards, but playing like a single digit XP percentage card feels like you've already lost, even though it could be 9%. And you're just like, you see everyone else posting 13, 14, 16, and you're just like, oh, I have no chance with my 9%, even though maybe it's, messy. And it's like, oh, well, 9% on 100 is much better than 14% on 50.
Exactly. I know I definitely get that feeling as well. I feel that, I don't know, well, me and you have been here long enough. We remember when the threshold was an all-star rare and we had the big freshie and the wee freshie, and it was anything goes. There was no cap. There was XP, there was captains, and it was a walk in the park. If you could get 5 starters and like a decisive, you would be, one decisive between your 5 guys, you would sail to it, no problem at all. It's a little bit different now. Obviously, we've got that cap implication, and it's 280 now, obviously. But I think, having captain bonus, having XP bonus, like, it's one of those, I think it's one of these nice little moves I've made, but it's like rewarding the veterans, but it's like, hey, if your gallery's set up, this will be a walk in the park. Like, you'll pick this up. Okay, no problem. So I like it, and I'm buzzing for it, and I'm glad it's happened.
Should be very exciting. And so it's this game week. Thank you to everybody for joining us. If you could please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I would say shout out to Quinny, but he's right here. So yeah, the deadline is now, for those of you who are watching live, 21 hours and 58 minutes away. So get cracking on those lineups. For everyone who's catching up, thank you for tuning in after. And again, if there's any feedback you guys have on these videos, anything you want us to add or take out or discuss, whatever you want, just leave a comment below. You can also find me on Twitter at Andrew M. Laird, which also is named X. I keep calling it Twitter and I can't stop, Quinny. I just can't do it. I see the X and I'm like, okay, that's an X, but I just pronounce it Twitter. That's my move on that one. But yeah, thank you to everybody for joining and good luck this midweek.